Okay, so let's talk about a figure from the Yoruba tradition who is, well, he's incredibly complex, often misunderstood, but so relevant. We're talking about Eshu, the Orisha, or divine spirit, of the Crossroads.
I mean, really think about that for a second. At every single point where a path splits, where you have to make a choice, what's actually waiting for you there? It's a huge question, right? It gets at the very nature of choice and consequence.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The Yoruba tradition says Eshu is already there. He doesn't just show up when you're in a tough spot. He is the junction. He's this constant presence, waiting at every single place where the world kind of forces you to pick a path. And you've got to get this right from the start. You hear him called a trickster god all the time, but honestly, that label just doesn't do him justice. It's way too simple. He's more like the divine force governing the very architecture of choice itself.
All right, so let's dive in. To really get what Eshu is all about at that crossroads, we've got to start with how he looks, his whole symbolic appearance.
Right away, you see he's all about duality. He can appear as a child or an old man, showing that choice is timeless. He wears black and red, which, if you think about it, are the colors of twilight, that moment right between day and night. It's all about ambiguity. But you really got to pay attention to that hat. That hat is everything. It's the key to his most famous and maybe most important lesson. And that, of course, brings us to the story of the hat. This one story really reveals the deepest lesson Eshu has to teach.
So, picture this. You've got two farmers. They're best friends. They work in fields right across the road from each other. Their world is totally shared, Their friendship has never, ever been put to the test.
And then, one morning, Eshu just strolls down that road separating their fields, and he's wearing his famous two-colored hat. It seems like nothing, right? Just a guy walking down a road, but it's about to change everything.
And this is the setup for the whole conflict, laid out so simply. The first farmer, from his side of the road, sees a black hat. The second farmer, from his side, sees a red hat. Now, here's the thing. Both of them are telling the truth. They're just describing what they see.
So later on, they're chatting. One says, "Hey, did you see that guy with the black hat?" And the other one's like, "What are you talking about? The hat was red." And what starts as this tiny disagreement, it just spirals. Each one thinks the other is either a liar or has lost his mind. Their whole shared reality, their friendship, it just shatters. And that's when Eshu shows up again. He stands right between them and shows them the hat. And of course, it's black on one side and red on the other. Where they were standing determined what they saw. See, they were both right, but neither of them had the whole truth.
So, what's the point of all this? What's the story really trying to teach us? Well, it's a huge lesson in perspective. Okay, so this is absolutely crucial. Eshu's so-called trick, it wasn't about lying to them or being mean. The whole point of the disruption was to teach them something. It's like a sacred lesson, It was designed to completely blow up their cozy, certain assumptions and force them to see a bigger, way more complex reality.
And this really gets to the heart of it. The moment you realize your point of view, no matter how right it feels, isn't the entire story, that is where real wisdom begins. It's about having the humility to just ask, wait, what did you see?
This idea of Eshu as a teacher of perspective, well, it ties directly into his much bigger role as the divine communicator.
You see, in the Ifa tradition, Eshu is basically the gatekeeper. You can't start any ritual without honoring him first. Why? Because he's the one who opens up the lines of communication between us here on Earth and the divine. He's like the ultimate translator, taking all this cosmic wisdom and making it something we can actually use to make choices.
Okay, now let's take this ancient wisdom and connect it to something really powerful and historical. This whole idea of navigating your life when you're under extreme, almost impossible constraints.
Because for the African diaspora, the crossroads has never been just some abstract idea. Think about it. The Middle Passage, that was the ultimate navigational crisis. All the old maps were useless. So what happened? New ways of navigating had to be invented, like following the North Star. And you see this pattern repeat throughout history, this need to find a path through an impossible landscape. It's a constant return to that same junction, that same crossroads.
And this leads to a really powerful philosophy. Eshu's wisdom teaches us that even when all your options are hemmed in by an unjust system, your choice is still a choice. It's still real. It's still meaningful. In fact, the very act of figuring out how to navigate those constraints, that itself is a form of resistance. And the dignity you hold onto while making that choice, that's a kind of freedom that nobody can ever take from you.
So, what can we take away from all this?
What is the wisdom Eshu offers us for our own paths, for the crossroads we all face?
I love this because it's such a powerful way to reframe things. The crossroads, with all its tough calls and impossible choices, it's not where things go wrong. It's where life goes deep. It's the very place that forces us to be creative, wise, and spiritually resilient.
And in the end, it all comes back to that story of the hat, doesn't it? The most important piece of wisdom for any junction, any argument, anytime you're just so sure you're right, is to be willing to step outside of that certainty for a second and just ask, what does this look like from your side of the road?
And that's really the question Eshu leaves for every single one of us. In our own lives, in our disagreements, in all the things we're absolutely certain about, we're all standing on one side of a road looking at a hat. So what part of the truth are we missing simply because we haven't stopped to ask what the person on the other side of our road sees